Order, order. Stephen Timms to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr Twigg, and I'm very pleased to be serving under your chairmanship this afternoon. This time last year, India had a devastating COVID surge. By the 6th of May, the country had recorded over 400,000 cases. Oxfam India, which was founded in India by the British Oxfam charity, provided urgent supplies and support. It worked with India's health departments, district administrations and local organisations. Staff set up oxygen plants, provided ventilators, delivered food to vulnerable communities. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was amongst those who praised the response of civil society organisations to the pandemic, and Oxfam India played a key part in that response. And yet in January this year, the charity received some very bad news. The renewal of its Foreign Contribution Regulation Act licence had been refused, a decision apparently made last December. The result is that Oxfam India is no longer able to receive funds from abroad. Its annual income will fall from around 15 million euros to 2.1 million. At least 11 of its 15 development projects will close. Its former reach of over 1.5 million people, mainly Dalits, indigenous populations, minorities, women and girls, will be drastically cut, and no explanation for this decision has been given. Charities and NGOs in receipt of foreign funding in India must be registered under the 2010 Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, the FCRA. That regulates how foreign funding can be received. Charities and NGOs now need to operate through a designated FCAR account at the State Bank of India's main branch in Delhi. According to Christian Solidarity Worldwide, local human rights monitoring groups say the purpose of this is to supervise and monitor NGOs' activity. The Act now gives the government huge powers to inquire into what NGOs are doing, each time putting their work on hold until the inquiry is complete. Give way to the gentleman.
That's it, the Honourable Gentleman for Right Honourable Member for East Ham for securing this debate. Just to remind, on the 6th of January this year, members highlighted another charity, Missionaries of Charity. They were reinstated some days after the debate. But the Honourable Gentleman, it's just not Oxfam, it's Greenpeace, it's Compassion, and also a number of the NGOs of Christian heritage, and several thousand have also a Muslim background. And 250 Hindu NGOs have been closed as well, because they're anti-government. But would the member for East Ham agree with me this is an early warning bell of increased human rights abuses in India, only harms India's poorest, and is a symptom of the continuing pressure from Hindu nationalism?
Yeah, I think the Honourable Gentleman is absolutely right about that. It does seem clear that the FCRA is being used to make life difficult for organisations which from time to time may be critical of the government. In 2016, a commission appointed by the UN Human Rights Council called for the repeal of the Act. But in 2020, it was tightened up even further on the grounds of bringing greater accountability. Of course, what is happening to NGOs is part of a wider pattern in India. We all grew up thinking of India as the greatest democracy on the planet. The briefing for this debate from the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Human Rights is absolutely right to refer to, quote, India's rich tradition and constitutional status as a secular democracy. I remember vividly. Yes, I'll give way to my honourable friend.
I thank the member for giving way. I was simply stunned when the reputable organisation Amnesty was forced to close its office in India too. The suffocation of minority rights and the lack of freedom of expression has also been illustrated by the ongoing conflict in Kashmir, the farmers' protest, and the persecution of minorities, which you have mentioned, including the Christians and the Dalits. Now, right today, Muhammad Yasin Malik and other Hurriyat leaders have been sentenced for life, and their only crime is wanting freedom from Indian illegal occupation. So do you agree, the Honourable agree with this, that the Parliamentary Group on Human Rights, that India is a diminishing democracy?
Well, I do agree with him. The situation is very worrying. I remember vividly the pride of Muslim constituents with roots in India in their home country when I was first elected. But that's all drastically changed. There have been new laws to make things difficult, specifically for Muslim citizens. Our Prime Minister's state visit to India last month took place against a backdrop of interreligious violence in Delhi and the demolition of Muslim-owned buildings. The Christian charity Open Doors, which launches its watch list every year in Parliament, now designates India as the 10th worst country in the world in which to be a Christian. It's been sliding down other indices as well. It's ranked 150 out of 180 countries in the latest World Press Freedom Index. Freedom House ranked India as only partly free in its Freedom of the World report this year edition, noting that, quote, the Constitution guarantees civil liberties, including freedom of expression and freedom of religion, but harassment of journalists, NGOs and other government critics has increased significantly. The Economist Intelligence Unit, in its latest Democracy Index, categorises India as, quote, a flawed democracy. And Civitas, the Johannesburg-headquartered Global Civil Society Alliance, categorises Indian civil society as, quote, repressed, which is the second worst category in their ranking, having been downgraded in 2019. Now, no one of those indices proves there is a problem, but the overall message they all convey is unmistakable. The 2020 changes to the FCRA have effectively banned NGOs from research, advocacy, campaigning. They've also created new bureaucratic and practical hurdles, a ban on NGOs transferring to other NGOs, transferring funds, other restrictions on funds distribution, a cap on administrative costs, delays from the necessity of additional form filling. It is claimed that all of this is to strengthen transparency and accountability, but it's fairly clear the government is targeting charities and non-profits that question its policy. So I want to ask the Minister if she will urge the Indian authorities to review carefully the FCRA for compliance with international human rights standards and to suspend aspects of the law that do restrict charities from providing urgently needed relief. The Centre for Promotion of Social Concerns is a prominent human rights organisation in India. It lost its licence under the FCRA in 2016. The Ministry of Home Affairs said this was on the basis of a field agency report. The group challenged the decision in the High Court, and in its evidence to the court, the Ministry complained that the organisation used foreign funding to pass information to United Nations special rapporteurs and to foreign embassies, and that this was, quote, portraying India's human rights record in negative light to the detriment of India's image, close quote, and that such acts were, quote again, undesirable activities detrimental to national interest. My honourable friend is right to draw attention to Amnesty International being forced to put an end to its COVID support. The head of Amnesty International India said at the time, even if you're working on COVID, the law makes it very difficult for you to be able to even accept foreign aid coming in without being in violation of the law. As he said, Greenpeace has lost its licence. The Ford Foundation has been suspended, and NGOs from other overseas countries are telling their own governments how hard this is making things for them. The case of Oxfam that I started with, Oxfam's been sending help to India since 1951. Oxfam India became a fully Indian organisation in 2008. It is today one of India's largest NGOs, providing food, shelter, clothing, medicine, medical equipment. It was reaching over 1.5 million people, but now it's lost its FCRA licence. That number is going to be drastically reduced. They applied to renew the licence on the 1st of April last year in good time. It appears that the application was rejected on the 15th of December, although they've received no official communication from the Indian government about that decision. It can now only take resources from within India. Its income was previously made up by 75% by foreign aid. A lot of staff are going to lose their jobs, and crucial humanitarian and social work has ended. In 5 years after the current Indian government took office in 2014, over 14,000 NGOs have been barred from accessing foreign funding, seemingly mainly to hamper criticism of government policies. Nearly 6,000 didn't have their FCRA licences renewed last year. One very notable organisation affected, as the Honourable Member has pointed out in his earlier intervention, was the Missionaries of Charity, founded by Mother Teresa. They were blocked from accessing international funding on the grounds of, quote, adverse inputs, but nobody knows what adverse inputs means or what the problem with Mother Teresa's charity was thought to be. As he's rightly said, that decision has been reversed. So that does at least suggest that external pressure can help deliver renewal of an FCRA licence. Oxfam India applied well before the deadline. There have been no reasons for the refusal, simply a statement that the decision had been taken in the, quote, public interest. And one of the problems is that the FCRA definition of activities prejudicial to the public interest is extremely vague. And I wonder if the Minister will seek from the Indian government an explanation about why Oxfam India's activities are regarded as, quote, not in the public interest. Oxfam India has now filed a petition to the Indian government for a final administrative review. There's as yet been no response. On the 10th of February, the Permanent Secretary to the Home Office, Sir Matthew Rycroft, raised this issue with his counterpart at the Indian Home Ministry. In response to a written question that I asked about this on the 17th of May, the Home Office Minister said, and I quote, "The Permanent Secretary addressed the difficulties that some NGOs in India have faced due to enforcement of the FCRA, which is impacting both on the work we are funding and the work of UK headquartered global NGOs in India." And I very much welcome the Permanent Secretary's intervention on this. But the Indian government, as I understand it, has given no assurances at all about whether these cases will be reviewed. There's clearly a lot more to do. The Home Office Minister answering my question said that the UK continues to, quote, monitor developments related to the FCRA, especially impacts on UK government-funded programmes in India and the work of British NGOs in India. But I think we do need more than monitoring. I'm sure the Minister will agree with me about the negative impact of the FCRA. I do ask now that ministers should press the Indian authorities to review that legislation, lift some of these restrictions, and press for greater transparency of FCRA licence determination. Just want to finish, Mr Twigg, with the words of Amitabh Bahar, the Chief Executive of Oxfam India, whom I met on a recent Zoom seminar, about what's happening in India. He said this to the BBC, quote, "The Minister of Home Affairs' decision to deny renewal of FCRA registration will severely hamper collaborations which were providing relief to those who needed it most during times of crisis." I do hope the Minister will be able to reassure us that Her Majesty's government recognises the crucial importance of this issue and that the influence of her department will be brought to bear to promote freedom of expression, even where it at times makes governments uncomfortable.
The question is that this House has considered the impact of India's foreign contribution law on NGOs. Minister, just before you start, if it's helpful, the debate needs to finish by 16:43. If you take all that time, it's a matter for you. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Twigg. Fortunately, I did write down the time we started, so I had an eye to what time I needed to be sat down as well. So first of all, it's a real pleasure to be serving under your chairmanship this afternoon, and I'd like to thank the Right Honourable Member for securing this debate, and also to honourable members who've also contributed. It's always a pleasure to see the member for Strangford. I think we've been in this chamber several times over the last couple of days, and also a pleasure to see the member for Manchester Gorton in his place too. And I just wanted to, and I hope I will address some of the points that have been raised this afternoon. I think it's important to start off that, this government firmly believes that a vibrant civil society is central to any democracy. NGOs and civil society in the UK and overseas make huge contributions by holding governments to account, by promoting respect for human rights. The government supports and works with a wide range of NGO partners through our programmes around the world, including in India. India is the world's largest democracy, has a proud democratic tradition and a history of inclusive government. And as with all democracies, we look to work with the Government of India to uphold its democratic values, norms and principles. Turning to the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, India's, or otherwise known as SCRA for the benefit of brevity, this regulates how NGOs and other civil society organisations can receive foreign funding for their programmes and activities in India. The versions actually of this legislation have been in force since 1976. It was amended by the previous government of India in 2010 and by the current government of India in 2020. Any NGO that now receives foreign funding now needs to apply for FCRA registration, for a FCRA registration number and renew its registration every 5 years. Since the FCRA was last amended, a number of NGOs have had their applications to renew foreign funding licences rejected. I'll come on to talk about the number of cases in a moment. And that it does include organisations with whom we work directly. This has had a significant impact on their ability to operate. Now, while some organisations, as already mentioned by honourable members such as Missionaries of Charity, have succeeded in having their registration restored, others have not. The UK's strong and growing partnership with the Government of India enables us to discuss concerns where we have them. We continue to believe that NGOs make a vital and positive contribution to society. And as with all countries, we will always welcome more progress on these issues. Through the British High Commission in New Delhi, we monitor developments relating to the SCRA. In particular, we look out for any impacts on UK government-funded programmes and the work of British NGOs in India. We talk to the NGOs affected and we encourage them to seek recourse, including through the Indian courts where it's appropriate. We have also raised their cases with the Indian government directly at ministerial and also senior official levels. This includes the issues faced by Oxfam India, the recent cancellation of the foreign funding licence of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, whose headquarters are in Delhi, and the freezing of Amnesty International's India's bank accounts. And as mentioned by the Right Honourable Gentleman, in February, the Home Office Permanent Secretary raised difficulties facing Oxfam India with his Indian counterpart during our Home Affairs dialogue.
Very quick.
I will happily give...
I thank the Minister for giving way, and indeed it has been a week where we've been in debates regularly, as the Minister knows. Minister, the figures are 12,580 NGOs had their licences revoked, almost epidemic proportions. I'm just wondering, has the Minister had a chance to maybe oversee that number of all the organisations that have been there? And if so, I don't expect an answer today, but do you know that there's a programme of trying to address all of these, the 12,580 NGOs who had their licences revoked?
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Gentleman for his intervention. And I'd say the Honourable Gentleman is passionate on so many different issues, and particularly where it comes to defending freedom of religion or belief. And in terms of the specific numbers he's referring to, I think what I would say is we do raise the cases with the government of India directly, but I would happily kind of pick up following this. I can write to the members afterwards.
Can I just ask, I welcome the intervention of the Home Office Permanent Secretary. Can she just tell us that the case of Oxfam India has been taken up by ministers, and indeed perhaps by the Prime Minister when he visited very recently?
So in terms of the case of Oxfam India, what I can say is that the British High Commissioner to India met with the CEO of Oxfam India on the 14th of January to understand their concerns and to offer support. And as I said, this was discussed by the Home Office Permanent Secretary during the Home Affairs dialogue in February as well. And just turning to Amnesty, you do remain in contact with Amnesty and officials last met Amnesty International UK on the 4th of May this year. As well as financial regulations, we know that some NGOs and civil society activists have faced difficulties in India as a result of security legislation. We've also raised this issue with the Government of India. Our relationship with India is very important and is central to our foreign policy tilt towards the Indo-Pacific. Our 1.6 million strong diaspora community provides a unique living bridge of people, commerce, ideas and culture between our countries. A year ago, the UK and Indian governments committed to strengthen our relationship through the new Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. And our Prime Ministers, I will give way to the
Can I thank the Minister for giving way on this matter? And there is no doubt the importance of our good, strong relationship with the Indian government. But, like I mentioned earlier on, we have seen even today that Muhammad Yassin Malik and other Hurriyat leaders been given life sentence for a very basic thing, which is having freedom. And it's India who's occupying that. So what do we, as a good friends of India, should we not be reaching out and telling them to obey the UN resolutions?
Minister. So I think there's a couple of points I want to make on this. I think one important thing is that, no aspect of our strong relationship with India prevents us from speaking frankly about issues with them. In terms of that particular case he refers to, we are monitoring the trial. And we note that he has been charged under Indian law, and we can't intervene in the independent judicial process of another country. But we do urge all countries to respect and uphold their international obligations regarding the treatment of detainees. But it is important to note that it's important that we have these strong relationships, and it does enable us to have kind of a meaningful dialogue and having and speaking frankly where necessary. Also, I think the other thing about our relationship with it does support regional and global security and prosperity. And a year into the roadmap, we have made excellent progress. And as has been mentioned, the Prime Minister visited India last month to build on this further. And the Prime Minister and Prime Minister Modi discussed the need for democracies to work closely together. I said in terms of kind of regional global security, they reiterated their commitment to transform defence and security relations and to enhance cooperation in support of a free, open and secure Indo-Pacific. Lots of other areas of importance in terms of joint work, in terms of research and development, will deliver next-generation capabilities across land, sea, air, space and cyber. And the Prime Minister also announced a raft of commercial agreements to boost our trade, investment and technology partnership. And during the visit, the UK and Indian businesses confirmed more than £1 billion in new investments and export deals in sectors from software engineering to health, creating almost 11,000 jobs here in the UK. And our Prime Minister has also set a target to conclude the majority of talks on the comprehensive and balanced free trade agreement by the end of October 2022, a deal which could supercharge our trading relationship and boost jobs and wages here in the UK. Moreover, the Prime Ministers underlined their firm commitment to taking ambitious action on climate change, cooperating closely to deliver on the Glasgow Pact. The visit reflected the breadth and depth of our relationship and how it continues to deliver for the people of both countries. But to conclude,
I'm grateful to have us setting out the increasingly close nature of the relationship. Can she assure us that ministers will make representations to the Indian authorities about the position of Oxfam India in order that it can continue to obtain income from outside the country?
as I said, in a number of these different cases, please be reassured that they are raised both by kind of senior officials and also ministers. And I think I wanted to just say, to conclude actually, this, we do continue to monitor and raise the difficulties faced by some NGOs in India. We also continue to support Indian civil society and NGOs through programmes and the endorsement that comes from our relationship with them. Our relationship with India as democracies and as friends is important and will continue to grow. It's a partnership with the potential to deliver huge benefits for the people of both of our countries and beyond.